But you mentioned Augustus. Let's start with the kind of him for a minute. What did he understand about power that others didn't? Obviously he took power in a certain way. Can you talk a little bit more about his kind of rise to power a little bit, and also how he influenced this idea we're talking about of a multicultural Rome?
Yeah. So I think to understand Augustus, we have to step back just a little bit to talk about what the Roman Republic is, because for 500 years, Rome is a representative democracy where the people, in various ways, elect representatives, and it's never designed to be like an equal. Every person has an equal voice in the society. I mean, Rome never did that. But in the Republic, there was a sense that whoever was elected was accountable, and that they were supposed to to cycle through positions of power so that they were in power and then out of power, so no one dominated the operations of the state for any sort of considerable period of time. And as you get into the first century BC, actually in the mid second century BC, the Republic starts showing signs that it can't actually do what its citizens expect it to do. And so you have a situation that's really very similar to things we see in our world, where tremendous amounts of wealth get concentrated around a few people. This creates animosity, and ultimately, because that animosity can't be resolved politically, it starts getting resolved violently. As the first century BC starts, you have a series of civil conflicts where various people use military force to seize power and then push through what they see to be reforms that make Rome better. But it creates a culture where lots of people in the 80s BC are killed just because they're on the wrong side of a political division. And that is totally foreign to the way the Roman Republic had worked. Um, so you have a couple of generations that are scarred by this and try really hard to rebuild the republic in a fashion that is functional but doesn't use violence in this way. And each of them though runs into this like central problem. And Julius Caesar is, I think, the person who's most emblematic of this. They run into this central problem where they really want a republic to work, but they don't trust it to protect their interests. And so they try to let the republic work, but deep down they don't trust that they're going to be safe. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them if they actually trust the republic systems to work, because they think they're corrupt. And so they use violence in the end, even though they don't want to. And I think what we have to understand about Augustus is he watched that, right? He actually he was the nephew of Julius Caesar, but Julius Caesar wins a civil war in the period between like 48 and 45 BC, and he trains Augustus, who at that point was called Octavian, in how to do things politically in that environment. And then Caesar's assassinated in 44 BC by guys that Caesar had pardoned, because Caesar believed that ultimately the way you rebuild this state is you take people who opposed you and you give them a path to like reintegrate. And what Augustus understood was you can't do that. Right? So Augustus is this like deeply cynical figure who comes out understanding, like he learned from Caesar how all of this stuff worked, but he also learned from Caesar you cannot bring these guys back in unless you have totally neutralized them and terrified them that you're going to do terrible things to them if they ever sort of try to do something back to you. And so Augustus comes into his political career really violent, really willing to do whatever it took to get rid of his opponents, because he understood that that was what it would take for him to stay alive. Um, but what Augustus is also really capable of doing that is unique is he's extremely savvy. And so if violence occurs, he will do his absolute best to pin it on somebody else. Like, oh, my ally did that. I didn't do it, right? Like he signed off on it, but I was forced to go along with it. And so when Augustus ultimately wins the civil war against Antony and Cleopatra and takes Egypt and is the dominant figure in the Roman state without question in 30 BC, what he's able to do is say, yeah, all that terrible stuff that I've been doing for the last 15 years, yeah, it's not really my fault. And I'm kind of sorry it happened. So, like, let's reconcile. But the reconciliation is also sort of tinged with, and by the way, I don't need to say it, but if you do anything like this again, like I will kill you. And, the bad things that happen to other people, I'll do them to you too. but you don't need to worry about that because I really don't want to do bad things. I'm really a nice guy. And this is kind of the genius of Augustus, is everybody knew that this guy was absolutely brutal, right? Like sociopathically brutal. And he would take people, he would destroy people, he would kill people. Like if he needed to do it, he would do it. But he's also smart enough to realize when that is necessary and when you can afford to be kind of magnanimous and when you can afford to say, yeah, you did something wrong, but I forgive you because I'm a better person than you. And he'll remind you that he's a better person than you, and he'll let everybody in the world know he's a better person than you. And you can either swallow it or die. So this is, I think, the genius of Augustus is um, he realizes that you can and sometimes must use violence if you're going to be a dominant figure in Roman political life, but you also need to build a system so that people can pretend that they are not being intimidated by you. And generally, they'll trust that the system will work as long as they're not challenging you. And so, what Augustus creates is an imperial system that is really all about giving people incentives to participate in the system while also reserving for himself the power to destroy anybody who refuses to sort of play by his rules. And then the other thing that Augustus realizes is for this system to be sustainable, he needs to start bringing in really powerful people who are not part of the Roman structure yet. And so we have these accounts written by people from like Jewish elites from the city of Alexandria in Egypt who write about getting Roman citizenship because what Augustus is doing is realizing like these are really wealthy, smart, capable people who have the potential to provide him with a power base, and he can provide them with a way to get into that Roman system, and they will be intensely loyal because he's giving them something valuable. And it also creates a larger base of power that sidelines some of the people who might be upset about stuff that he did in the 40s and 30s BC. And so this sets a model for how the empire is going to work, right? You can continually, you can and need to intimidate people who might oppose you. You need to provide a path for reconciliation, but on your terms in a fashion that doesn't threaten your authority. You need to incentivize people to work along with you. And you also need to incorporate new people so you continually expand the power base with people who are grateful to you and therefore intensely loyal to you. And this is the model that emperors are going to use for the next like almost 200 years.
And in that model, then how does the Roman people look at themselves? How do they look at identity? How do they look at themselves in relation to the kind of like expanding empire that they're now building? If you were to ask someone back then, what does it mean to be a Roman? What's some of the things that they would say?